It's Monday, September 11th, 2023, and that means it's time for the Knee Jerks, Detroit Sports Talk with Eno, Big Al, and Nick, or is it Eno, Nick, and Big Al, or is it Big Al, Eno, and Nick? We haven't decided any of that stuff yet. So regardless, it's the Knee Jerks podcast with the three of us. I'm Al Beaton, longtime Detroit-based podcaster and blogger, the Big Al of the equation. Join us as always. Let me start with Nick Milanovich. Nick, how you doing tonight?
Not too bad. How are you doing, guys?
Good. Excellent.
Yeah, the other voice you hear is the man who knows a lot of things about a lot of things. He of the Out of Bounds Substack. Is it Greg Eno or is it Out of Bounds? I can't remember, Greg.
It's I call it Out of Bounds. It's still called Out of Bounds. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's of the Out of Bounds Substack. That would be Greg Eno. And Greg's latest is about essentially comparing Jim Eisenreich to Austin Meadows, but we might touch a little bit on that later in the show. We might talk Tigers. We'll see. There's a lot going on with the Lions and Michigan State, obviously. So, guys, are we doing all right?
Yeah, I please, Al mentioned the Substack. It is still called Out of Bounds, but the URL is gregeno.substack.com. Yes. So check me out there. Subscribe. Follow me on Twitter at Greg Eno, and follow the Knee Jerks on Twitter at the Knee Jerks. Is where you can find us there. We, as Al mentioned, we have we're coming to you now. Gosh, I think just 13 days instead of 14 or 12 or something like that now. How many days since the last show? And we are threesome now, as you know by now. And so we're gonna do the birthday game a little bit differently. We've got lots to talk about, of course, lots of Lions, Michigan State stuff with Mel Tucker, possibly like Al said, possibly some Tiger stuff. But the way this is going to go, first let me introduce the birthday game. Let's play a game we like to call Whose Birthday Is It, Maestro? Everybody knows how we play this game by now. I give Al and now Nick a clue or two or three of an individual whose birthday it is today in the world of sports. And the way this is going to work is I'm going to give each of them a chance to guess. And if one of them can guess this person within the first two clues I give, that person will win the prize, which, of course, today happens to be a beautiful collector's gift set of Brut by Fabergé. So who can pass that up? So this person, guys, made their name in the world of football. And I will say that he was born in the state in 1924. Sadly, he passed away in 2000 at age 75. Known far more as a non-player, although he did play, but is known way more as a non-player, and authored a lengthy career on the NFL sidelines. I'll stop right there. So I'll give Nick the first chance.
Go ahead, Nick. Yeah, you get this first.
I don't think this one's right, but for some reason, Paul Brown comes to mind.
No, that's a good guess. That's a good guess. Not Paul Brown. Al?
How about Norm Van Brocklin?
Another good guess. Very good guess. That's a very good guess, but it's not either of those two gentlemen. So that's good, though. That's two good guesses. So we'll come back and swing back and hit clue 2 next. But those are good guesses, guys.
Yes. Well, I appreciate you encouraging us. It's a good guess, guys. So, if you notice this podcast is in your feed a day early, it's because I'm leaving town again, and so it was either miss a podcast or we recorded instead of Tuesday night, we're recording Monday night. Kind of works out anyway because of our schedules and things like that. But we're going to try and stay on the every other Tuesday thing, depending on what we got going on in our lives. As we're all really busy people. So anyway, with that, since we didn't get the birthday game question, I guess that means it's time to get right into the topics. So, guys, what do you want to start with? Do you want to start with Mel Tucker or do you want to start with the Lions?
It's up to Nick. I'll let Nick decide.
Yeah, go ahead, Nick. You're the new guy.
Let's get the Mel Tucker thing out of the way, and then we'll end on a high note. How's that?
That's probably a good idea. Like the way you think, sir. All right. Let me get to the show notes here, and the joke that's going around is Tuck is no longer coming, so to speak, as that meme going back a couple years. Tuck's coming when MSU had that 11-2 season a couple years ago, well, like 3 years ago at this point. And at that point, Tucker received a 10-year, $95 million deal. Well, it was wild what happened Saturday night, guys. Were you guys? Did you wake up to this on Sunday, or were you up to hear about this Saturday night?
I can't recall.
Yeah, because I was
saw it Sunday
watching
for sure.
Yeah, because I was watching the the Pac-2 after dark, and all of a sudden ESPN comes out with an odd article that was released. They didn't have the details of what happened with Tucker, but they reported late Saturday night, just like around 11 o'clock. Tucker was under investigation for harassment, and MSU was denying freedom of information requests. And ESPN has said, we're getting Michigan-based lawyers. We're trying to find out what's going on here. About an hour later, around midnight, the USA Today dropped another bombshell with everything, details, names, everything, and which essentially involved Tucker. I don't want to go into the details because it's very uncomfortable, and it was just he was in a very problematic relationship with someone he had brought into the program, who was a well-known sexual assault activist. She puts herself out there to help people women who have been involved in sexual assaults, and she goes around the schools talking about this to basketball teams and football teams, wherever coaches would like her to go. Apparently, there was some sort of relationship there. Brenda Tracy is her name. There was some sort of relationship there, and it involved masturbation, phone calls. It's very, very. It may not have been legal, but it was the judgment was off the charts, awful. So the USA Today has all the details. We don't know if it was leaked. We don't know if it came from Michigan State. We don't know if it came from Brenda Tracy. We don't know how we used to have sources, and everything they had apparently was true. Apparently, Michigan State did not know the details other than there was a harassment investigation going on due to Title IX investigation regulations. So all this stuff was pretty much kept confidential. So, because everybody's first thought was, well, why did you let him coach? This happened in the summer. Then it turned out that the MSU administration, and this is correctly following those regulations, did not know all the details to protect people's privacy and so on and so forth. Regardless, now shit's hit the fan. Michigan State has suspended Tucker without pay. There's supposed to be a hearing scheduled for early October. That was already on the docket, as a matter of fact. But he's been suspended without pay, which says volumes that it's without pay. Harlan Bennett, their longtime secondary coach for the Spartans, was named the interim. And Mark D'Antonio, the winningest coach in the MSU history, who has his own set of issues, he is going to return as an associate head coach. Tonight, Tucker, through his lawyer, issued a statement claiming these allegations are false. His main thing is it's consensual, but it was very problematic because they are both employed by the university. The investigation has not been fair or without bias, and essentially he is claiming that this is just an excuse. It's an ulterior motive, in his words, to get Michigan State out of the 10-year, $95 million contract, which has about 7 years left on it. So ultimately, guys, this has turned into a complete shit show at Michigan State. What a shocker. Michigan State having issues again. It's looking like Tucker is going to get fired via the moral turpitude clause. He's going to get fired for cause. The whole mess will end up in court, and Tucker will probably receive a fraction of that contract as settlement, and who knows where they go from there. But who wants to start here? Because this is I could not, when this happened, when this was released, my jaw dropped. Like, what in the hell was he thinking? This might be the worst judgment a football coach has ever had.
Well, first of all, I don't know about Nick, but I find it very absurd. I can't believe that Mel Tucker's going to die in the hill of Michigan State's just trying to get out of the contract.
Yeah.
That doesn't hold any water with me whatsoever.
A man that has no defense that says stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, you have, a university that gave him, nobody held a gun to their head.
Yep.
Michigan State's head, gave him that huge extension 2 years ago. If there's anything that college football programs or basketball programs, for that matter, like.
Mhm.
It's stability at the coaching position,
Yeah.
because that's one thing that kind of sets you apart. It's a great recruiting tool.
Mhm.
It just from a status, just to be from a status standpoint,
Mhm.
when you can boast, when you can say if you're Alabama and point to Nick Saban, and
Mhm.
you can be Michigan State basketball and point to Tom Izzo, and you can be Duke basketball and point to Mike Krzyzewski before he retired. Those, I mean, that's it just doesn't happen very often. So when you have that
Mhm.
kind of stability at the coaching position, where you don't have to change every few years, you don't have to worry about recruiting, and also colleges love that stuff, and that's why they were
Yep.
all too happy. Michigan State was to
Mhm.
give him. Now you know you could we're not going to sit here and argue the validity of whether they should have given him such a contract, but the fact of the matter is they did it willingly.
Mhm.
And they did it for a reason. They
Yeah.
didn't want to be down this road again. They've just been through this Nasser thing, like was mentioned. So I find it incredulous that Tucker would go the route of. Now, if you want to dispute it and say it was consensual and get into a he said, she said thing, that's fine.
Mhm.
But to now try to come out and try to paint the university
Mhm.
as a bad guy here, because they're just trying to use this as an excuse,
Right.
because this is the only way. For folks who don't know, this contract that he signed was virtually guaranteed money. The only
Yeah.
way that Tucker would not be getting any money is if the university fired him for cause. Any other
Mhm.
reason, if they fired him, he could have gone 0-50 and they fired him, he'd still get the money. But if they fired him for cause that had nothing related to the win-loss program or the success of the program, that's the only instance where he would not get the money. So
Mhm.
so that's why he's going this route, because that's the only way that he would not be getting any money is if he was fired for cause. So,
Right.
but this is ridiculous. This is an
Mhm.
absolutely insane argument on his part. I wish he would have just, if he's going to protest this, stop at just deny it and go into a he said, she said, but to bring the university in as some sort of co-conspirator in this is just beyond the pale.
Yeah, he's ending his career. This is going to end his career, especially the way what his this response is, where he essentially is, claiming a conspiracy. That's what it is. It's a conspiracy. He just said. Nick, what are your thoughts on all this?
Well, so these allegations were, but I didn't see the press release. It was only like about an hour ago, right? Something like that.
Mhm.
And but what it sounds like is a lawyer doing standard operating procedure.
Yeah.
He's throwing out a bunch of things that it could be,
Mhm.
and basically trying to get the university on its heels and to probably try and salvage some amount of that contract versus losing it outright, because it's a substantial amount of money.
Right.
What is it? Still another $80 million or something like that left?
Yeah, 70, 80 million, something like that.
Ridiculous like that,
Yeah.
right? So that's he gets a fraction of that. He doesn't have to worry about working, supposedly.
Mhm.
Although the wife's going to probably get in a divorce settlement now. So
Yeah, that's another thing that's in this. He's married, even though
Yeah.
supposedly his marriage is on the rocks. I wonder why.
well, it certainly is now if it weren't
Yeah,
before. So,
yeah, exactly.
and if it isn't, that woman needs a talking to. So
Yeah.
But so I think that's just kind of like throwing out a bunch of stuff. I did hear though,
Mhm.
and I can't verify this, is someone said that Auburn University tried to get rid of their coach by doing a smear campaign, saying I can't remember the coach's name, but they fired him to in such a way to get out of his contract, and so they smear campaigned him, saying he had an appropriate relationship with someone on staff.
Was it maybe? Well, I mean, wasn't Gus Malzahn, was it?
I don't remember.
Or maybe or maybe it could have been Hugh Freeze or Art Briles. There's been several of these recently, though. You're right.
Yeah.
Bobby Petrino, for that matter.
So I heard that, and I don't know if that holds here. I think he's just, you muddy the water,
Mhm.
and as a lawyer, your first kind of reaction is you throw out a bunch of stuff, put the other side on their heels, and then you negotiate your way out of this. So I think that's what's happening. I do think.
Oh, yeah.
You know what? He was given a
Mhm.
big contract, and as soon as he was given that big contract, MSU had a bad season. So I think one bad season. And is it a panic button thing? I don't know. I don't know if they're trying to. I'm sure at some point they'll want to get out of the contract if it were, if he had a season like last year.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think, I think his lawyer is just kind of kicking up mud to muddy the water now. The consensual thing now, that's probably like, the only differentiator between him committing basically a crime or whatever you want to call it, or violating his contract versus not. So.
Yeah. We'll have to make sure people who aren't familiar with the moral turpitude clause is honestly pretty wide open. It's essentially, and it's designed that way, just essentially anything you do that they consider embarrassing to the university can be cause for termination. And it's a very, and it doesn't go, the turpitude clause does not go into a hell of a lot of detail, which leaves a big opening for these schools to run right through and get these guys out of here. But that's a good point, though, Nick. That this is his lawyer just throwing everything at the wall, hoping something sticks. Like I said, they're shooting for a settlement. They know his career at MSU is done. They know he's probably done as a big time Power 5 coach. So the last resort is to try and hate to use the term extort, but try to settle for as much money as possible. And but odds are it will ultimately be a fraction of that 70, 80 million. I wouldn't be surprised if it's in single digits, which is still a ridiculous amount of money considering how the relationship is ending between the two parties.
That's right. Oh, I'm going to throw this in. The very first time in my life I ever heard the expression moral turpitude was in the movie Porky's. Miss Ballbricker accused, I think, of one of the coaches of moral turpitude. And
yes, I remember that.
I was young, but I don't remember what the hell that was, but it was funny as hell.
Oh, God, I do remember that scene. Yes. Oh, God. Oh, Porky's. All right. That's quite a tangent there. So, but yeah, and I guess there's a couple things that also that I don't want to see happen. I don't want to see this become a Michigan State rivalry thing, because at this point, Michigan they don't have the higher moral ground anymore, if they ever did. Between they've had their own Larry Nassar scandal, and there's a lot of stuff that Bo did that probably would not fly today and things like that. And let alone they got a head coach suspended. If you agree with it or not, he is suspended. Actually, they had two coaches suspended, as a matter of fact, Harbaugh and one of his assistants. And also, please don't trot Tom Izzo out. That's something that I think every time something bad happens, there comes Tom Izzo. And oftentimes I don't think he helps. I think in some ways he makes things worse because he is obviously he is such a important part of the culture there. I think sometimes he is so wrapped up in that culture that he tries to protect the university at the expense of common sense.
I will say on behalf of I will say this on behalf of like fellow Wolverine alumni. I hope they don't bring this up and wrap this situation up and throw the make some sort of general comments about the university, the football team, or any of the other sports. It does not reflect on the student body. Don't tell me these kids aren't as smart, kind of thing, or or that's disgusting. One person really did something beyond dumb and did something awful. It should not reflect on everybody else at that university. That's tacky. Go back to our benign trash talk during the game. Root for your team in the rivalry, fine, but don't bring this in as something. This was a disgusting act and should not be a part of any kind of just fun, rivalry stuff.
Yeah.
Like it's on.
Well, let me ask you this, Nick, being an alum, do you think, especially after the the tunnel incident last year with the Michigan State players essentially attacking. I mean, that's essentially what the video showed. Two Michigan players hitting them with helmets. Do you and then the vitriol between the two fan bases got ugly. I mean, really, really ugly. Do you think that this rivalry has gone over the top, too far over the top when it comes to especially how the fans see it?
I think it's always been that way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's kind of, it gets out of hand. I mean, I remember like being an undergrad at Michigan and someone saw like a license plate holder that said MSU Spartans and wanted to do something to the guy's car kind of thing. I'm like, guys,
Yeah,
settle down. You know, it's one thing just to kind of like root for your team and go back and forth with, you know, the other team's fans, but don't get out of hand. You start looking really bad. And so I think it's kind of like always been there a little bit. And honestly, in that case, I think Tucker handled it well.
Yeah.
That instance. I think you and I talked about it back last November.
I believe
October.
we did. Yeah. Because Tucker immediately suspended these guys. You know, he didn't pull a D'Antonio. I'll just say that about that. D'Antonio was more of the type he would have let those guys play.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that came up at that time, I remember us talking about Izzo, is he made comments about it.
Yes.
Afterwards, and I'm like, God, shut up.
Yes.
You know, everybody's handling it like adults. Like, don't start just, you know, what do you call it? Improvising somehow, like.
Yes, and saying the wrong thing when Izzo just needs to sit this one out. Let the administration handle it. Because this is a brand new administration at Michigan State. So,
right,
Greg, anything you'd like to add before we maybe move on to more pleasant topics?
Well, just that, you know, I just feel like every time something like this happens, I personally almost always immediately side with the woman, because I don't know what incentive there is for anyone to put themselves through, because no matter how true the allegations are that she's levying, the truth is great. It's great to have the truth on your side. That's great. But to put yourself through, you know, you're going to put yourself through the ringer publicly. Now, she's been through this, of course, before, this Brenda Tracy. So she's no stranger to this kind of thing, of course. And she speaks on behalf of all these victims and so forth.
Yeah.
But it's just, I just don't know what the incentive is for a woman to make something like this up because of everything she's going to have to put herself through. In order,
exactly.
Which of course is what dissuades a lot of women from coming forward at all, or maybe coming forward for years. And that's the other thing that always drives me crazy, is when people say, "Well, gosh, that was 12 years ago. Why did she wait so long to?" Well, you know, it's because of people like you who are belittling her. And so, you know, I get that Mel Tucker is got to have his due process, and that's true. He should. And I also believe that he believes that this was something that she was welcoming when I find it hard to believe that she was. But you know what it is, guys? I just it's so easy. It should be really easy to just keep yourself under control. It should be that easy. You know, a married man especially, it should be that easy to engage in conversations with, and it's great that if they became friends, he and this Brenda Tracy, because of all of her involvement with the university and so forth. She was honored as a captain, you know, before spring game in 2022, the whole 9 years. If they want to be friends, that's great. I think it's wonderful. But how hard is it for a man to just keep it that, for whatever reason, men just try to keep pushing the envelope, and they want to turn those friendships into something more. And sometimes, in fairness, women want that too. But it seems like there's just, I don't know how, it just seems like it's easy when you've got that much money at stake to just keep it in your pants, if you will. And if you want to have, you know, I hate this, I can't believe I'm saying this, but if you want to have little fantasies about this woman, if you're Mel Tucker and you talk to her on a fairly regular basis on the phone, and you want to privately have fantasies about her, that's fine. But when you get into the, start touching yourself on the phone with her and start talking about how bad your marriage is and everything like that, it's just all that other stuff. Now it no longer becomes an innocent thing. It becomes, and Mitch Albom, who I really agree with, he was right. Mitch was, when he said, this isn't about Mel Tucker's sex life. It's about his judgment. And it's true.
Right.
I mean, he made a horrific, bad judgment call here. And like you said, Al, he's going to lose his job, and maybe, and I say with a capital M, maybe his coaching career. You know how this goes. Sometimes there's always a university that's willing to maybe roll the dice on you. But yeah, for the most part, he's probably, how old is he? Like 50, 51? 52?
Probably in that range, yeah.
He's 51, probably, I think.
Yeah, okay. He's probably done. He's is a coach.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's also worth noting that Michigan State is bringing back D'Antonio, to help them through the crisis. And the problem is, one of the reasons they are in this crisis is because of the way D'Antonio quit, where he retired. Because if you remember, D'Antonio had a bonus in his contract. If he stayed past a certain date, he was going to get like $4 million or something like that. And that date was in February, which was past pretty much when all the hiring merry-go-round is going on, which is usually January. And so all the jobs have been filled up, and then D'Antonio gets the check and then announces his retirement in like mid-February or something like that, leaving Michigan State kind of holding the bag, which left them desperate to find a head coach. And that's how they ended up with getting Mel Tucker out of Colorado at the time, who had to put up a thoroughly mediocre record there. So, and then essentially he gets Kenneth Walker III through the transfer portal, has one big year at 11-2, and it's been downhill ever since for Michigan State. So, D'Antonio, I give him credit for wanting to help out, and I think there is some ulterior motives there of him too, because as soon as you fire the coach, that opens up the transfer portal for the players. The players can leave immediately. That's just how it is, and I'm sure they're bringing in they want the big name there to help settle the waters down. But like I said, D'Antonio has his own set of issues we won't get into. But I do want to say that the reason they are in this mess in the first place is Mark D'Antonio and the way he quit.
Yeah, I guess you could go back. Yeah, you could trace it back to that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's a domino effect. Like the butterfly on one side of the, on the other side of the planet flaps its wings, and all the shit was rolling downhill on the other side of the.
Right.
So that's essentially what happened here. All right. With that, I would say we'd move on to the next topic, but you know what that means. When the next topic comes up, Greg's got to do the birthday game.
Oh yeah.
Clue 2 to get the gift set from Brute by Fabergé. This person, again, born in 1924, passed away in 2000. Football was his game. He was a player. Played for the Giants, I will tell you that. Was not nearly known as a player, though, as he was on the sidelines. And he coached the same team for his entire career.
Can I go first?
Yeah.
I think you're talking about Tom Landry.
I'm talking about Tom Landry, yes.
The Giants gave it away.
Yeah, the Giants gave it away. I was thinking about, I was wondering if I should give away the Giants, but I wasn't sure how well known it was that he played for the Giants. I know a lot of people know that he coached for the Giants. He was an assistant, but Tom Landry was a defensive back and was regarded, of course, as more of a defensive mastermind, although he had very convoluted offensive schemes as well. He was what can you say about Tom Landry? He was who he was. Coached the Cowboys from 1960 to 1988, 29 years, and passed away in 2000. So Brute by Fabergé will be headed down south toward the Michigan-Ohio border.
In your face, Nick.
Well, Brute's more of a 70s fragrance. I'm a Drakkar man myself.
Yeah, no, and it's funny you bring up
Drakkar by Noir, whatever it's called.
It's funny you bring up Tom Landry's offense, because every time I think of his offenses, his offensive linemen, they would set and then they'd stand up,
right,
and set again,
right.
I'm like, why?
Right.
As a former offensive lineman, I'm like, what the hell? But it was if you hadn't said the Giants, I still probably would have been in the weeds a little bit. But that me, I know the weirdest pieces of trivia, so. I'm sorry, Nick. I didn't mean to throw it in your face. So
That's okay. Actually, I thought of Tom Landry after we had finished the first round. I thought that would be more his age.
Yeah.
I think when I said Paul Brown, it's like he's got to be a lot older than.
Yeah.
That,
and once and after I said Norm Van Brocklin, said no, he was too good of a player. Because I know Greg said he had an okay career, not a great career.
Van Brocklin was known more as a player, frankly, than he was a coach.
Yeah, because Van Brocklin was an awful coach. You know, ask Vikings and Falcons fans. Anyway, guys, we might as well move on to football since we've had a football question with the birthday game. So, the Lions upset the defending Super Bowl champions, the Kansas City Chiefs, 21-20, Thursday night, nationally televised game, the only game going on at that time. The world was watching. They had one of the biggest TV audiences for a regular season game in quite some time. But the Lions kind of actually lived up to some of this offseason hype. They've been getting a lot of hype lately. This is the first of 5 nationally televised games this year after having none last year. But for the first time in memory, of an impressive road win when there's the spotlight is heavily on them, especially after the way they ended last year. When they finished 8-2. They beat Patrick Mahomes, kept him very much in check, but we can go into some of the reasons why, specifically a few of the receivers. But the offense did just enough. They won time of possession, and they outgained the Chiefs. And also Jared Goff now has thrown 359 straight passes without an interception, third longest streak in NFL history. If things continue, he will break it in 2 games. The rebuilt defense held Mahomes in check, 226 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. That pick going for a pick 6 from rookie Brian Branch. And there were 3 very, very, very big drops by his receivers. I think might have even been more than that, but the official count was 3. So let the Lions or Super Bowl contenders talk. That's a bit of an overreaction, but Greg and Nick, this sure looks like an NFC North and playoff contender, to say the very least, especially to win. This is the kind of game, and we'll go into some of the reasons why we would have thought they would have lost this game in the past. But this is a game they would have lost in the past. They really, especially if the refereeing we saw.
Yeah, and frankly, it was a game that may have even lost as recently as last year because Dan Campbell, as everybody knows, is Mr. Gambler, loves to go for it on fourth down, and it's and sometimes to a fault.
Yep.
And the decision to go for it Thursday night within the last few minutes of the game, go for it on fourth down around midfield, when you're only leading by 1, when a field goal was all would be needed to put you on the losing end of the stick, was looking like maybe once again Dan Campbell got a little bit too
aggressive to a fault.
Yes, and maybe maybe discretion would have been the better part of valor there, and he should have pooch punted it, or at least at worst they would have started at the 20. Still only a field goal, of course, needed, and I know that Mahomes is Mahomes, and but his receivers, we'll get into this, I'm sure. His receivers had an awful night, just awful.
Yeah,
drop passes left and right. He wasn't very good, by the way. Mahomes wasn't very
good. Yeah, I don't think he played all that well either.
A lot of the passes that those guys dropped were not really on the money. I mean, they were catchable, but sometimes they were behind the receivers. So I thought, well, here we go. Ill-advised decision there. Campbell made a couple other weird decisions too. I'm not sure if you guys remember. There was a holding call that he took against the Chiefs instead of 4th and I don't know.
It would have been 4th and 2 when instead of turned at 3rd and 17.
Right,
and that call.
And
they were at it was near midfield, and Kansas City probably would have went for it anyway. It was
right,
which
is fair, but why give them 2 chances to make it instead of 1? So that was odd. There was another penalty situation. I can't remember what it was where I kind of scratched my head like that's odd. But this guy,
and don't forget the fake punt.
The fake punt
in your own territory. They were inside of 25, and it was still the first quarter when he ran that fake punt.
No, but in answer to your original question,
but
in answer to the original question, though, it was a game that they probably would have lost, in the past. But it was not a banner night for the Kansas City receivers by any stretch of the imagination.
Right.
And even though they didn't really sack Mahomes, there was some pressure. And
A lot of pressure.
Aiden Hutchinson was might have been the best game I've ever seen a guy play who never got a sack.
Exactly.
He was incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Nick, you're the most jaded of the three of us here. What's your take on what you saw? Because we, for what it's worth, guys, Nick is someone who hadn't really watched many Lions games, but now that he's doing the podcast, he has to, or at least watch the ones he can.
That's right. So my first thought throughout the game is, and this is after having watched the Lions for decades, I'm sure you guys felt this too, that same old Lions sort of, I don't know, trauma, if you want to call it that.
Waiting for that shoe to drop, in other words.
Exactly. So I was, like, when is it going to happen? When is everything just going to crumble?
And usually, you're right. And that fourth down play that Greg started with, that's the one I thought it was going to go all to hell right there.
Like at the last 2.5 minutes of the game, right?
Yeah.
It's like,
exactly.
Okay,
yeah.
They're going to blow it. They're going to go on fourth down. They're going to blow it. They're going to give it to Kansas City, and Kansas City is going to just march. Down the field, or some defensive back is going to do some cheap shot, well after the play is over, and move the markers way down the field just something stupid.
Yeah.
Which I can't remember how many times that has happened to the Lions over the decade. Just some dumb bonehead thing that they do. But none of that happened.
Yeah.
None of that happened. They gambled. It didn't work out on some of them, but Kansas City didn't capitalize.
Yeah.
Now, I will say this too. Kansas City, yes, they dropped some passes. But Greg brought this up. They were chasing Mahomes all night long. It's not like Mahomes had all day to throw. He was throwing on a run a lot, or he was running a lot.
Yeah, so, I think he ended up being their leading rusher, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, I mean, he had to run away a lot of times. It wasn't like a necessarily, probably on broken plays. So the Lions didn't play like the same old Lions. They didn't give up, and I think that's what fans are responding to, because in the past, like I said, they would lose because of something stupid. Or because, it's at the very end, some bad call by a ref didn't go their way. But I don't think that was the case. There were some bad calls by the ref, and I think the situation was that one lineman that kept on lining up.
We will get into that, yes.
So, that finally got called later in the game. But, they played through it. So they played a good game.
Yeah. Yeah,
so
and
give the Lions credit, not just Mahomes and
we'll also get into that, the asterisk comment by Mike Tirico, because there was 2 stars missing from Kansas City, but there was weird decision making from Andy Reid. Greg, what did you think about him going for it on 4th and 20 and 4th and 25 when he still had 3 timeouts and it was still more than 2 minutes to play? I thought that is a man who does not think he's going to get the ball back if he punts it. That's the only way. That's the only reason he can make that decision. He didn't think they could stop the Lions.
Well, I don't know if that was more puzzling than Reid not going for it on 4th and 2 when they were up 21. I'm sorry, they were up 17-14.
Yeah.
Reid decided not to go for it on 4th and 2 and decided instead to kick a field goal, which still kept the game a one score. Yeah. Reid kind of took the ball out of Mahomes' hands a couple of times. There was that, and there was also that goofy play where essentially they used Mahomes as a decoy when they ran that. Somebody else took the snap, and the play got completely blown up.
I think that was a 3rd down play that Pascal just blew up.
Right. And I don't know what that was all about either. Yeah. But Reid not going for it at home, up by 3, a chance to go up by 10, settling for the field goal, again, kind of taking the ball out of Mahomes' hands, if you will. I think that was fair game for some criticism. I was glad to see him do that, but I thought that's odd.
Yeah.
Because I was fully expecting Reed to go for it at that juncture, and frankly, that left the door open for the Lions to make the go ahead touchdown and win the game.
Yeah. 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 And when it comes to Dan Campbell's calls, I despised him punting from Kansas City's 40. Yeah, they pinned them at the 10, but no, if you're going to be that aggressive, that's the perfect. You're going to be an aggressive coach. That's when you want to be aggressive, when you're well inside the other team's territory. He punted there. I hate that. And as for the fourth down near midfield with a little more than 2 minutes left, I didn't hate him going for it as much as I hated the play call. David Montgomery was moving the chains.
Yeah.
And you notice once they got the ball back the second time with very little time left, they just gave it to Montgomery, and and he got a first down. Bam, game over. So that's what I was hoping to see, especially considering how well, for the most part, their offensive line played. But I'm not going to complain, because of all the stuff we're talking about here. We've seen this happen over and over again, where this is blown up in the Lions' faces. And as we all decided, we're all waiting for that same old Lions shoe to drop. And it never, ever did. And next thing you know, now the Lions look like they're, especially after Sunday's games. I had Red Zone on all day. I just love having Red Zone on. And looking at Minnesota, Green Bay, and Chicago, Chicago looks like an absolute bottom feeder. Minnesota looks like they're regressing back to the mean. There's no way they could continue to win all those one-score games, and they lost that one-score game Sunday. And the Packers are still, who knows how good Jordan Love is, because the Bears suck. So the Lions really look like the class of the division. So at least we got that going for us. And then they get to play the Seahawks next Sunday, who are coming off an awful game against the Rams at home. So, and Ford Field they're going to blow the roof off that place. So we're going to have a fun weekend coming up. But we need to talk about the refereeing. I know Nick alluded to it, and so did you, Greg. And the topic during the game was Jawan Taylor, the Chiefs right tackle, the social media blew up. In that he was, I had never seen a guy so blatantly. The false starts were enough. It looked like he was cut it super close, and you probably could have called the false start on him at least half the time. But what's worse was Taylor apparently was it wasn't apparently he was illegally lining up well off the line of scrimmage, to the point where Chris Collinsworth called him a slot receiver. I mean, and that's because he needs to be lined. Well, this is what an NBC asked their officiating analyst, Terry McCauley, and he said his helmet has to break the waistline of the center. And to be honest, we've watched him the whole game. He's not remotely close. It's putting the defensive end at a tremendous disadvantage when he can be that far back. So between him being like 3 yards off the line of scrimmage and false starting half the time, Aiden Hutchinson, I don't know how we managed. No, it's a wonder he was even able to pressure the quarterback, let alone not get a sack. But I'd never seen anything so blatant. And the thing is, I can't call the guy out, because if the refs aren't going to call it, keep doing it. I don't blame him one bit. You do it till they call you on it. And they didn't even throw a flag on the guy till I think it was in that final. That's how the Chiefs partially ended up 4th and 20, because they finally called a flag on Taylor. But I don't know about you, Greg, but I had never seen anything ever like that. Watching the game, where the blowback would have been scary if the Lions have lost that game. In some ways, I think the NFL dodged a bullet.
Well, yes and no in terms of dodging the bullet, because they're taking a lot of grief, the NFL is, for allowing that to happen. Yes, the Lions did win the game. That does cushion it a little bit, but it made a mockery of the whole false start rule, the whole rule about where you're supposed to be able to line up. And I understand, as a football coach, as a football coach, if I'm speaking through that lens, I understand the notion that, hey, if the officials are not going to call this, we can't rely on that call. We're not going to get that call. So we got to just play through it. We can't cry and bitch and moan about it.
Yep.
If they're not going to call, they're not going to call it. And that should be evident early on. Okay, look, guys, they're not going to call this. And you just got to tell whoever's lining up against opposite of Taylor, which was mostly Hutchinson, look, he's not going to call this. So that's just something you're going to have to deal with. Now, but the league, though, is still taking a lot of heat, as they should, even though the Lions won the game, because it was obviously a national televised game. So all the eyeballs were on it, opening game of the season. And that's always a huge ratings winner anyway. So everybody watched the game. And all it did is even though the Lions won, it still just propagated this notion that NFL officiating is just not up to snuff. And
that the NFL has teams that they favor. Especially considering the Lions' history with this kind of referees either blowing bad whistles, weird whistles, or not blowing a whistle.
Well, again, despite what Taylor was doing, Hutchinson had. I watched him a lot, and I watched a lot of Hutchinson. Somebody had spooled up some Hutchinson highlights after the game, and this kid Hutchinson, I mean, he just never stops. This guy is, I know it's a cliche to say he's got a high motor, but he never stops. He plays right to the whistle, and he was chasing Mahomes. And the thing that doesn't show up in the score sheet necessarily, it's going to go down as no sacks for Hutchinson, but I think there were a few occasions where he kind of altered Mahomes' throw, made him a little less comfortable. You can't tell me that Mahomes didn't know that Hutchinson was breathing down his neck. I mean, I think was disruptive enough, even though without getting a sack. But a lot of it was, if you look at Hutchinson in that game, it wasn't just him bowling over the tackle and just using his brute strength. It was his footwork, his speed, and the spin moves, and he never stops. This guy never, he does not ever give up on a play. And that's, I think, what is endearing him to the fans is they're realizing now that sacks aren't just, or that good defensive line play isn't just sacks, and sacks aren't just because you've beat your opponent fair and square. You can do other things that are not related to sacks. And if you look at his Pro Football Focus had all the stats, his pressures, his hurries, his this, his that, and he was as dominant as any. They said he was the best player in the field, and it's hard to really say no to that.
It's and for example, there was I remember one play where I think James Houston had a death grip on Mahomes' leg. Didn't get the sack, but the pass sailed incomplete. The night was filled with plays like that. Mahomes didn't make a lot of plays, but as you said, he was never comfortable in the pocket, and that led to a lot of overthrows, or as you said, the drops where he was in the range of his receivers, but they weren't easy catches, or he in other words, he just wasn't on target much because of the pressure. So that was, as they say, one of the best pass rush is a good. No, I'm sorry. The best pass defense is a good pass rush, and I think we saw that on Thursday night. But Nick, what did you think when you were watching this? Because I was just like, I was, words failed me when I was watching the game, seeing how Taylor was lined up. More so than the false starts. It was how he was lined up that really got me.
Well, what it made me think, number one, is that let me step back. One of the commentators said he was doing this a lot in Tampa Bay last year, and I guess he was getting called for it a lot there.
Yeah. Well, I believe he was with Jacksonville, and it was in the playoffs.
Or Jacksonville, okay.
Yeah, it was in a playoff
whatever
game,
his previous team was.
Yeah.
And so he was getting called a lot, so I don't know what the deal was there, whether that was his normal routine. And then he was doing it again here. So either he's just trying to get an edge on the defensive rush, is my guess. And he just isn't fast enough if he lines up properly.
Yeah.
For all I know. The other thing it could be, it's like, I agree with Greg. Hutchinson was after Mahomes all night long. And as much as people want to say the Kansas City offense had a poor performance, well, maybe it was because the Lions defense had a good performance. So, give them credit. They were chasing him all night long. So,
Yeah, and I guess that can lead us to the asterisk comment. Where,
Well, before I have one
I'm
more
sorry, go
comment
ahead.
related to
I don't want to cut you off.
So, and as far as the officiating goes,
Yeah.
what was more perplexing is like as an official, you're either going to call something or you're not going to call something.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not calling something for a good part of the game, and then all of a sudden, for some reason, they started calling these.
Yeah.
The way this guy's lining up at the end of the game,
Mm-hmm.
where everything's amplified, it's a close game, and everybody's paying much more closer attention in the end, in the last few minutes, and all of a sudden now you're calling penalties on the guy.
Yeah.
And so it's like, what the hell? And I think the teams could adjust better if they know, okay, this ref is not going to be on our side on this type of call.
Mm-hmm.
They can adjust, but you keep doing it because the ref's not going to call it, or you do something because the ref will call it. But now the ref is sort of waffling one way or the other. That's probably even more frustrating.
Yeah.
Because you can't predict as a player or a coach, like, okay, let's take advantage of this. This dude ain't calling this. And then the ref does a 180.
Yeah.
So
that was interesting how that happened. But Jörg mentioned to Dan Campbell's credit, he just said we got to adjust. When he was asked about it in the post game, he said every crew is different. They decide what they are or aren't going to call, and we have to go with whatever they're doing and go from there. So but at the very least, the Lions didn't get flustered. They just dealt with it. And as Greg mentioned, Aiden Hutchinson looked like the best player on the field. Looked like one of the best players in the NFL in that game. But that kind of leads us to the asterisk comment that literally sent Lions fans had a conniption fit when they heard this. NBC's Mike Tirico, he was the play-by-play guy next to Chris Collinsworth, and Tirico's a veteran. Going back to ESPN, he used to call Monday Night Football. Now he's their lead Sunday night guy. He got his own fair share of blowback online when he said the Lions would have an asterisk next to this win because KC did not have defensive tackle Chris Jones or tight end Travis Kelce, both big names, both all pros. Jones was out because of a contract dispute, which ended today, like in the last couple hours, and Travis Kelce, who has a knee injury, and they decided to hold him out for precautionary reasons. Lions fans literally lost their shit, to say the least. I'm sure you guys saw it on Twitter. Tirico did defend himself, saying that the quote was taken out of context, as asterisk was part of a longer quote where he called the Lions for real. And this has kind of led me to I find every fan base very annoying, where one, they think every national broadcaster is biased against them.
Right.
Everyone, they all think the same thing. I'm sure Kansas City people thought that NBC was biased against them.
Right.
And the other thing is, people say, "Oh, Tirico hates the Lions." Tirico lives in Ann Arbor. The guy turns up occasionally on sports talk radio in Detroit. He's lived here for a very long time. He doesn't hate the area, and yet you see fan bases. Oh, he just hates Detroit. He hates the Lions. He hates Michigan. No, he lives here. He loves it here. Mike Tirico can live anywhere he wants. He lives in Michigan. So it was an off-the-cuff comment that he probably shouldn't have made. I'm not surprised it was made because I know I saw other media members bring it up. That but the thing is, people forget the Lions were missing players too. They were missing their top defensive back. They were missing their top outside threat at wide receiver, and they had some issues as well. So, I'm not going to get on Mike Tirico's case for one offhand comment. I'll just, I think the whole thing was blown up out of proportion, as usual when it comes to anything involving an online fan base.
There were a couple of weird comments. That one by Tirico was odd, and he shouldn't have said it. It was a poor choice of words. I don't know what he was thinking. There are no asterisks in the NFL.
Not in the NFL.
You win or you lose, and that's just the way it is. Collinsworth had an odd one too. And that was before the game even began. He was doing the intro, and they were talking about no Kelce, of course, no Jones, and but specifically about Kelsey and Collinsworth said tonight we're going to find out just how good Patrick Mahomes really is. I'm like,
yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
the reigning
yeah.
MVP. I thought that was a strange thing to say. But here's the thing about this whole Mahomes Kelsey thing, and I said it on Twitter. Nick might have seen this. Mahomes won the MVP, okay, which means you're the most valuable player, which means that you are the player adjudged to be the most valuable to your team, of course. And then extrapolating that out to the whole league. Well, if Kelsey is so important to the Chiefs' infrastructure, if you will, and losing him, they made a big deal about it right from the get-go, all throughout the game. They kept showing him on the sidelines, the street clothes, and so forth.
Yep.
Well, and then the comment by Collinsworth, we're going to find out how good Mahomes is, even though he's the reigning MVP. Well, then can't you make the case that Kelsey's the MVP of the league? if his
exactly
is so detrimental that even Mahomes, even the reigning MVP, is helpless without this guy. Well, then how important is Kelsey versus how important Mahomes is?
Yeah.
You can never convince me that a tight end, I don't care if he catches 200 passes a year, is as important as a quarterback. So, okay, they're missing Kelsey. Okay, fine. They've got a lot of other good players in that team. They've got the reigning MVP behind center. I don't understand why, if Kelsey's such a big difference maker, then he should be the MVP and not Mahomes.
Yeah.
Right? Sounds like he's more valuable. He's more valuable to the Chiefs than Mahomes is, according to
exactly. They made it overblown, like Kelsey was the focus, the face of the offense. I mean, isn't the quarterback, specifically Mahomes, supposed to be making guys around him better? The way this came across, it made like Kelsey made Mahomes better.
Right.
And
Exactly.
it belittles Mahomes because I don't think he deserves that.
Right.
But yeah, it was the whole reaction to the Kelsey thing was, I thought it was completely overblown. I'm with you there.
Well, I think what made it worse, guys, was that Kelsey went out just days before the game was played. And if he was out, like if they knew weeks ahead of time that they weren't going to have Kelsey, I think that'd be a different story. But the fact that Kelsey went down just a couple of days before the game was played, I think that's what made it more of a big deal, because the Chiefs didn't have a chance really to prepare for this game, knowing that they'd have no Kelsey. I think that's probably what if Kelsey was injured all training camp and was going to miss the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season, I think that would have been one thing. But the fact that as recently as Monday he was going to play, and all of a sudden starting Tuesday he's not going to play, I think that's probably what made it worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. As for the Tirico comment, it was the first thing you were talking about. I figured that was out of context, and people who think too much about that can kiss my asterisk. But like, I think it's just a waste of time to talk about that. But going, beyond that, and well, it would have been a different outcome if Kels was in the game and Chris Jones. Like, maybe not.
Yeah.
What happened to them happens to every damn team in the league. Their players go down.
Right.
Their good players go down. Their bench players go down.
Right. Exactly.
You've built a team. And if you've got 11 guys on the field at once, if your total offense crumbles with one guy going down, with maybe the exception of the quarterback, you don't have a good team.
Right.
It's a team sport. How many times have championship teams lost a really good player and still power through and, win games? That happens often.
Yeah.
And Kansas City's a good team. Don't it's game 1 of a 17-game season.
Right.
Don't count them out.
Right.
They could have played better, I suppose. They could have played worse, but the Lions played well. And the Lions last year were not a good road team at all.
Right.
So,
right.
They got better versus last year. And this season is a different season. And you're telling me that one tight end is your difference between winning and losing? I say bullshit. So it's not possible.
Yeah.
And, they could have made different mistakes than the ones they made. The coach could have made other bad calls than the ones he made, in that game. So, this is just a normal game in the NFL. Somebody got hurt and is a good player, and you deal with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's the old bromide, next man up. I mean, every team in the league uses that. Yeah, you're right. And I think Dan Campbell's response to it when he was asked about it, because Dan Campbell's asked about everything, and he said, "Well, is there an asterisk next to 1 and 0?" No, that essentially shut everything down. No, as you said, there's no asterisk to any win in the NFL. It's a hard league to win games in, and on the road, rabid crowd, Super Bowl champions who got their rings and lowered the banner, and you won. That, I don't care who's on the field. That is an impressive ass win. It really, really is. And because I'm so glad they actually did win that game, because I was so afraid. I know. Greg and I talked about this a few years ago, Nick, when the Lions. I'm sure Greg remembers the game where the Lions lost against Kansas City late in the game. I think there was a fumble return for almost 100 yards, and I think the final was like 13-10 or something like that. And the Lions fan base acted like they won the game, which just made me want to pull my hair out. And I'm so afraid. I guess it's that as Nick says, it's those years of same old Lions that I keep expecting the fan base to do stupid stuff. I keep expecting the team to do stupid stuff. I keep expecting the front office to do stupid stuff. Yet, for the most part, at least the team in the front office are making smart moves. And I just hope that the fan base doesn't become insufferable. But I have a feeling that's exactly what's going to happen.
Well, that's probably another topic. But one thing that I think that is another reason to be enthused about this team, if you choose to do so, is the offensive line.
Yeah,
offensive line is as advertised. As you know, it's been hard for them to all be healthy at the same time. They are now, and just like they did in Green Bay, they closed that game out. Also, national TV on the road. The Packers had everything in the world to play for. Another game where the narrative of the broadcast was about one player, in that case Aaron Rodgers, about Travis Kelce. But the Lions figured out a way to close that game out, not give the Packers the ball back. They did the same thing essentially against Kansas City by closing it out. Why? Because, like you mentioned, Al, earlier, David Montgomery, who did not have eye-popping numbers, and if you just look at his numbers, they don't jump out at you. It wasn't 25 carries for 150 yards, but they were crucial yards. The offensive line in the waning moments there grounded it out and did what they're paid to do, and they acted and played like a premier offensive line, which is what everybody says they are, and I believe they are. And they played that way and completely closed the game out and got that crucial last first down to seal it. And that's what they did. And they did it because they did not have eye-popping rushing totals. They didn't rush for 170 yards as a team, but they got yards on the ground when they needed to. And as you know, the Lions were famous for always giving the other team the ball one last time because they could not get that last first down. They could not sustain a drive in the fourth quarter when they needed it, would always punt the ball away. And the other team would always take that ball and drive it the length of the field and get the game-winning score. And how many times we've seen that movie? Well, this time, 2 games in a row now, both on national TV and both on the road against 2 good teams, the Lions closed the game out with their offensive line.
Yeah, hell, just go back to the Seattle game last year. They forced 1 punt, and they win that game.
Right.
And they couldn't force a single punt. Right. And obviously, but and that seems to have changed. How much has changed in the year? So it's it's refreshing to see a Lions team actually close games out. They've been doing a damn good job of it since halfway through last year. So. I did like the one line that Campbell mentioned in the post-game presser. I know the one that everybody caught. One of the ones everybody caught was, "We're built for this shit." I expect to see that on T-shirts real soon. But I love the when he was asked he was asked the old softball, what did you learn from this game? Be original media, but that one always comes up. And he replied, I didn't learn anything. I got verification of what I already knew. If that's a man full of confidence and thinks he's got a team that's going to do things, that says it right there. I thought that was a great way to sum up how he felt about this team.
I would agree. Like, he knows his team. He understands his team.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I've liked the way he's handled the media since he's become coach, and not just contrasting him to his predecessor, who was just a nightmare.
Yeah.
To say the least, and arrogant as shit. And but no, he's handled it well. He's always been honest, and I think that's why people have responded to him.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that he doesn't kind of give up. I mean, there is, and I actually like the fact that I think, since they asked him about the officiating, he goes, we're going to just deal with it, whatever we have.
Yeah, exactly.
Which usually a Lions fan, and you would hear bitching about the officiating.
Mm-hmm.
It was against us. And he's like, okay, sometimes it's going to be against us. We got to deal with it because the only way to win is to get around it. So you're not going to change the officials. Someone's not going to go back after the game and correct the score so you won. So none of that's going to happen. So,
well, you know what, too? But by the way, back to that whole Taylor thing with the way he was lining up, people forget that one of the things he was doing by doing that was basically sending a smoke signal what the play was going to be.
Yeah.
When he lined up that way, it was guaranteed to be a pass.
Mm-hmm.
When he lined up closer to the line of scrimmage, of course, it was going to be a run. So you could flip it around and say, well, he kind of helped the Lions by telegraphing what the play was going to be, because he did not line up like that. Yeah. He did not line up halfway in the backfield if it was going to be a run play. He only did that if it was going to be a passing play. So there's two sides to that coin too. Once you realize the referees aren't going to call that, then you say to yourself, well, gosh, whenever Taylor does that, they pass the ball. Mm-hmm. So now I know that when he's lining up like that, it's going to be a pass.
Yeah. And that could play into why the Lions didn't complain much, because it was a tell, as you said. And, and that's, hey, if you see how he's positioned, you can pin your ears back almost immediately. So, that's so that's a good point. Yeah. And hey, it worked out. Lions did win. So, but I don't know what it is, but good Lord, it's nice to see the Lions with a likable group of people. Say what you will about Dan Campbell. I mean, he came across as such the meathead when he got hired. Everybody brings back that stupid kneecaps quote, and yet he was, a lot smarter than most people gave him credit for. I mean, you don't last on Sean Payton's staff as long as he did if you're a dense meathead. He's a smart guy who apparently knows what he's doing, and he has improved immensely as a coach in his almost 2.5 years here. So it helps that he's likable as hell, but it also helps that he walks the walk, he talks the talk. If he says he's going to be aggressive, he's aggressive. I mean, he can be aggressive to a fault, guys, but I would take that over what we saw from Jim Caldwell for years, who was, the next risk Jim Caldwell took would be the first risk he would ever take. Right. Yeah. So give me if you're going to lose aggressively. If you're going to, go down in flames, go down fighting. Don't go down with your tail between your legs and the way we saw with Caldwell's teams. And then we get going on Patricia's. And then again, though, anybody would look likable when you compare them to Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia. Those were two of them. I think Nick said it best. Arrogance. They were so arrogant. They were completely unlikable. I hated rooting for these guys. I did not want to root for these guys, but they were Lions coaches in front office, but they were just horrible. I won't say horrible people. They were just they're not who I want to root for when I'm watching the game.
Right.
They were jerks. They were jerks.
Yeah.
They weren't very
Nick's
good.
Not holding back tonight.
No, that's kind of like what was the last straw for me. the Lions, like, who are these idiots? And I'm sick of hearing about the Patriot Way.
Yeah.
The Patriot Way was Tom Brady at quarterback. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Basically.
It wasn't even Bill Belichick. It was Tom Brady at quarterback.
Yeah, the room has come off the Belichick rose a little bit since Brady's moved on. You are right.
Yeah, I mean, like, he is not coming near, the success he had with Brady there.
Mm-hmm.
But, and those guys were, it's like I see in like sometimes in corporate America where the CEO is really good and then his direct reports are hired to be CEOs elsewhere and are just disasters.
Yeah.
But they're just look like success by association.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what happened with most of the New England assistant coaches who went to be head coaches somewhere else. They were utter disasters.
Yeah, you're right.
So
there is no Bill Belichick coaching tree at all.
No, it's like a dead root. It's like a stump.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
But you know what? Give the front office credit. Give the head coach credit.
Yep.
The Lions head coach and front office.
Yeah.
They inherited a disaster. I mean, that was a sunken ship that they inherited.
Yeah.
The previous group got rid of good players and installed who knows what. And these guys picked it up. Honestly, I would have voted for Dan Campbell as coach of the year last year because you have like a 1-6 team, then go 8-2 or something like that.
They were one. Yeah, exactly. They finished the season 8-2 after starting 1-6. Yeah.
1-6 teams don't do that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
1-2 teams and then go on a run. Fine. But 1-6 teams don't do that normally. Give them credit and give those guys credit for fighting through it. That's why people are excited.
Yeah.
The same old Lions would have rolled over and stunk like a rotten corpse by the end of the year.
Yeah.
And
they did at the end of the Patricia era.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean,
that was a team that just said, we're done. Yeah. We don't want to play
they
for
were
this guy.
basically dead on arrival and nobody knew it until that first season.
Yeah.
So, and please don't call him a rocket scientist again. As a person who has done projects for rockets, he is not a rocket scientist. So,
the Patricia era, I can't. This has been a breath of fresh air compared to the Quinn Tricia era. What's going on there? How much fun this team is to watch right now. And they're not going to win all their games, but this is a team that should win the majority of their games and should make some hopeful and should at the very least make the playoffs. And speaking of playoffs, there's another playoff contender coming up this week. Sunday, the Lions play at home, their home opener against the 2022 playoff team, the Seattle Seahawks. And as I mentioned earlier, the Seahawks beat the Lions in that 48-45 at Ford Field last year in the game. The Lions never got a stop. They get one stop, they win that game, and they're in the playoffs. But whatever. And that is also the Seahawks are the team that knocked the Lions out of the postseason last year when they won. I think they won in overtime. They had like the 4:30 start, and the Lions were playing at 8:00. And if the Seahawks had lost, the Lions just needed to win to make playoffs. So the Seahawks won in overtime, and that ended the Lions' season. But the Seahawks did not look good on Sunday. I saw quite a bit of it on Red Zone. They lost 30-13 to the shorthanded Rams. They didn't have Cooper Kupp. Matthew Stafford looked pretty good, and Geno Smith looked like pre-2022 Geno Smith, a journeyman. We'll see if he can turn himself around. But shockingly, this is a big spread for the Lions. The Lions are right now 5.5-point favorites. Greg, when's the last time the Lions were 5.5-point favorites in anything?
Oh, wow. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. But, this is interesting because the Seahawks seem to be, and Nick sees them a lot because he's out there, but they seem to just, sometimes even if they do it with baling wire and duct tape, they seem to be able to put a team together. They resurrected Geno Smith for God's sakes. That was unbelievable. Is it I'm going to ask Nick, is it the Pete Carroll factor? Is Pete Carroll, is he the guy? I mean, is he that good of a coach?
He has to be.
Yeah.
He honestly, he has been a good coach. If you think about it, he gets rid of his quarterback Russell Wilson, and you think, okay, this team's going to fall apart. They bring in Geno Smith. You're like, what the hell?
He looked like he did it at the exact right time as well for moving on from Wilson, because he hasn't been the same player. Yeah.
Right. No. So is it Wilson or is it the system?
Yeah.
I will say that it's been a long time complaint that the Seattle's offensive line hasn't been that effective.
Yeah.
Honestly, I have a feeling the Lions are going to beat. I'll say this now, and I could be wrong, but it doesn't really matter because I don't have any money on it. Is that the Lions probably will beat that spread, and they will beat them probably pretty easily. Partially because the Lions are better than they were last year this time. And I watched the Seattle game too. They weren't that great, and the Lions are playing at home, which they were a lot harder to beat at home last year.
Yes.
Than this year. You know, away game at Kansas City was rather impressive, but they're going to play tough at Ford Field. So, and Seattle's just didn't look that much better than last year. So,
yeah, the roof's going to come off Ford Field. I can guarantee that, because I know when the Lions are good entertaining, the fan base. I just remember I was going to the Silverdome back in the day, and that was probably the loudest. I've been to rock concerts that were stupid loud, and the loudest thing I've ever been to, loudest event I've ever been to, was a Lions game during the Barry Sanders era. That Silverdome got so you had to yell at the person you were sitting next to hear each other, and I'm anticipating something very, very similar this Sunday in Detroit, because that crowd is going to be out for blood, at the very least.
Well, the Lions barely lost in the game against the Seahawks last year too.
Yeah.
So
exactly. I'm with Nick. Greg. This is the team the Lions should beat.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I don't know if they'll beat the spread, but this is the team they should beat.
Yeah, they'll be sky high. But the Seahawks I don't trust them. I mean, they're never an easy out. They just aren't, even in their down years. They're just not an easy out. And they may have looked bad against the Rams, but last week. But the Seahawks are never an easy out. No matter where you play them, and that's a team that I've always been very suspicious of, because they always seem to be able to rise to the occasion. They're not always going to win, and they're not always going to have a winning record, but for some reason they just I don't know, they're just a hard out. They're hard to beat for a lot of
I'll agree with you on that, Greg. I mean, they've been well coached, and your suspicions are correct. They're well coached every single year, even in what you might consider a down year for them. They will be ready to play. That team will be ready to play. Are they going to be good enough? Who knows? Yeah. We'll see on Sunday. But they are a well-coached team, so never count them out.
Yeah, and Pete Carroll's won at every level. I mean, he won a national title in college. He's won a Super Bowl in the NFL. I mean, and he still looks like he could go out and run 15 miles right now. And he's in his 70s at this point. Yeah. So it's but yeah, I think I think you nailed it right there. The Pete Carroll factor is always scary, because good, bad, or ugly, the Seahawks are always a team you don't want to play. But but between the Lions get the next two games at home, they got Seahawks and Falcons. At the very least, they should split. I would not be surprised though if they go 3-0, start 3-0, I should say.
Think about this: Pete Carroll's teams recovered real quickly from offering a fat contract to Matt Flynn, if you remember him.
Oh yeah,
and
he got that contract because of that Lions game.
One game.
Lions. Yeah, one game.
Yeah, that's right. And flamed out over here, and then that was I think Russell Wilson's rookie season. So so they recovered quickly from that. So that's a sign of a good team. You're going to make mistakes.
They're a well-run franchise,
and you're going to make changes, and adjustments really quick, and they do. So
yeah, exactly. All right. Before we start kind of wrapping things up here, we should also mention that that game got a ridiculous TV rating. 27 million people watched Lions Chiefs. That was up 24% from last year. And also, it was the most watched program on television since the last Super Bowl in February. All I can say is it's the NFL and then everybody else. The NFL is like up here compared to where the other pro leagues in college football and hell, most entertainment is at this point. It really does feel like the NFL is the entertainment king in this country now.
Well, I don't think there's any question. I think it's been that for quite some time.
Yeah,
you know,
totally.
There was a time way back when college football ruled the day, but in the starting in like the mid to late 50s, and especially after that overtime game where the Colts beat the Giants.
That's the game they call the greatest game ever played.
Yeah,
if I remember right.
That was of course right when television was really starting to take hold as well.
Yeah.
So many people saw that game on television. That's when pro football then usurped college football and boxing and wrestling were big ones back then. But really, I think because the NFL does such a good job, Al, you and I have talked about this so many times, keeping themselves above the fold all year round. I mean, between the draft and the leading up to the draft and the mock drafts and the combine and the OTAs and the spring games and this and then the Hall of Fame game in late July, early August. And they just basically take over, especially in cities that have multiple franchises where the baseball team is down, like in Detroit and Chicago, other cities where the baseball team is down. NFL starting in August, even really kind of in mid-July when training camp starts, really starts to suck up all the oxygen and get a lot of the headlines. And they are a tough beast to beat when it comes to popularity, all the money that's wagered on the games, of course. All the different ways you can watch the games. You were mentioning earlier about Sunday Ticket and Red Zone and so forth. Many different ways to watch the games, and it is I'm guessing it's got to be like $1 trillion industry if you added everything up. And when you consider I think the average length still the average length of an NFL playing career is like 2.5 years. The average length. So the players shuffle in and out. There's nobody plays in this league for too long anymore. Players doesn't matter. Doesn't matter the churn level of the rosters. The product itself is king right now.
Yeah.
Do you think? I was thinking about this. Part of it with the NFL is you only have now 17 games. Right. You only have just a few games.
Right.
And there's a lot of dead time between games. Like 6 days, right? 6-7 days.
Sure.
And
sure.
So you're filling up that time. And
absolutely.
I think that plays to their advantage.
Of course.
Because like 162 baseball games, there's no break from that. Right. And to be honest, I like baseball. That was my first love as a sport. But it can be a boring game at times. And there's a lot of dead time. Whereas the NFL is like it's almost like these regular sugar spikes of, they're in a huddle, they're doing this, there's a commercial, and all of a sudden, bam, this really exciting play.
Yeah.
And
that's the other thing about the NFL. I know it's an awful league. I know it takes years off the players' lives, and the owners, for the most part, are a bunch of fail sons who have never done anything with their lives other than inherit money from their fathers. But I enjoy the game so much. I just kind of put that off to a corner of my brain, knowing CTE and career-ending injuries and contract disputes and how ugly the game has been historically. Yet it's such a entertaining game to watch. I hate myself for watching the games, but I can't help myself because it's I grew up, I played football through high school. I always watched the game, and I don't think I can't see myself ever stopping unless, even if it got to the point like I gave up on the Lions for whatever reason, say they signed Deshaun Watson or something. I would still watch the NFL and I would still watch the NCAA football just because I enjoy the sport so much.
You know what I'm thinking to myself? My least favorite championship to watch, though, is the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I honestly don't like watching the Super Bowl. I like watching the season. I like watching the playoffs because it feels like there's this tension and there's going to be more tension next week. So let's see what happens. Let's see who advances in the playoffs. But I kind of like where I like the other sports is that you have the championship is a 7-game series.
Yeah.
So it's not just one game and done.
Yeah, I'm with you that the better NFL weekend is Championship Sunday when you have the AFC and NFC championship games. And I think that is those usually tend to be more entertaining and better played than the Super Bowl, just because the Super Bowl has turned into such a spectacle.
And I think that's it, because in like the last few years, or last couple of years, you remember that the games really all went down to the wire. You know, it was just like a last play sort of thing, and then the leads were flip-flopping. So teams, there's little margin for error, and that's what made it exciting.
Right, exactly.
And the spectacle part kind of exhausts me. I really don't give a shit about the halftime show or any of them. I don't care. I never want to watch that.
Nick is out of fucks to give.
Yeah, for that, yes. The commercials are okay, but I'm not going to sit there watching commercials. So
yeah, I'm with you there. Halftime I wander off, get myself a drink and whatever. I'm not going to sit there and and watch. Hell, I don't even. I couldn't even tell you who did the last Super Bowl halftime, even though they make such a big deal out of it. So I'm with you there. But yeah, it's the NFL's world. We're just living in it. All right. Let's I guess wrap things up real quick. Dick, are you watching any Tigers baseball right now?
No, and I think I'm like Greg. I haven't watched all year long. It feels like they gave up on a season before they even started, and I don't want to watch bad baseball. I don't care enough.
Greg,
to watch
I know you're not watching right now at all, are you? Have you watched any baseball?
I've watched maybe 5 or 6 innings total the whole year.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm saying
it doesn't mean I can't comment on it. It doesn't mean I know.
I'm not even talking about that because you don't follow what's going on.
Yeah, you're right.
Still have an opinion on this because I'm not going to sit through a lot of these games either. I really haven't. I think the last Tiger game, and the thing is though, even when I have the Tigers on, I'm not actively watching them all the time. I'm doing other things. That's just how baseball's always been. But yeah, I haven't even had a Tiger game on since late August at this point. Not even on in the background where I'm doing other things. I just, I got to, between football and being out of town and just doing other things, I really have not been following game by game with the Tigers. But there has been a little bit of news. That's that two young players are injured again. Matt Manning got hit in the foot again with a line drive again, and he broke his foot, so he's out for the year. Riley Green will likely miss the rest of the season because he hurt himself playing defense again, making a dive. His elbow is swollen to the point where they can't even get imaging of it right now. So he's pretty much done. And I think the one news that everybody expected to hear was they finally announced Austin Meadows. This all came to a head when the beat writers noticed that Austin Meadows' locker had been taken over by one of the kids they just brought up. And then when they talked to AJ Hinch about it, the Tigers announced Austin Meadows is still dealing with anxiety issues, will not return this season, and being that he will extrapolating that out, being that he would earn approximately $4+ million if tendered a contract, it's almost 100% certain that the Tigers will non-tender him, essentially ending his Detroit career. So essentially, that's all the Tigers news that's happened over the past 2.5 weeks. Because they're not playing any games of any import. I mean, I'm not going to sit there and watch them play the White Sox or the Yankees for that matter, who suck as well. So. Yeah, the Tigers are the Tigers. They're playing out the string, and the young guys are showing some life, and that's all well and good. But I think Nick nailed it when we knew this is what the season was going to be like going in when they did not make any kind of move for any kind of veteran hitters.
Yeah, I mean, my general thing now is like if this team's not playing for anything, I'm not going to watch because I can go do other stuff that's more interesting.
Once again, Nick's out of fucks to give.
Yeah, well, I mean, seriously.
Yeah, I agree with you.
It gets old to watch shitty teams be shitty.
Yeah, it's been too long for that.
Exactly. And, they kind of, to me, Scott Harris threw in the towel at the very beginning of the year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Say we're going to compete for as long as we can. It's like, well, I'm not loyal enough to keep watching. So I'll go do something. If
they have to earn
I don't either.
Eyeballs.
So
yeah.
And I want to see a team that's going out there and playing for something.
Yeah. I will say I will watch a lot of the playoffs. I do enjoy playoff baseball. And I'm going to be in Florida for the first rounder, like for most of the first round or two. So, and my dad's a huge baseball fan, so I know I'll be watching it. The Rays going to make the playoffs. So I know I'll be watching every Rays game. But baseball, I miss seeing the Tigers play important games, and but I do enjoy watching playoff baseball. Then when the tension ramps up and the talent gets better. But the one thing I don't like is games ending at 1:30 in the morning. But that's a whole other topic. So.
You can move.
As they say, the West Coast is the best coast for watching sports, right?
Almost. Sometimes 4:30 is almost a little too earlier, like 3:40 in the afternoon for me, like some of these games.
Oh God, I was laying in bed Saturday, flipping between what was it, the Cal game and the Stanford game, and it was like 1:30 in the damn morning here. Those games are still going on out there.
Oh wow.
So, yeah. Oh, Pac-12 after dark, or as it now is, Pac-2 after dark. So, But yeah, I think with that though, guys, I think it's time for the jerk of the week. Nick, you get to go first. Who's your jerk of the week?
All right. Well, I'm going to go away from the obvious choice of who's making the news lately, and I'll go for something that's a little more obscure, but nonetheless, it's kind of relevant. I mean, you guys know I'm a U of M grad, but I'm also a graduate of Iowa State University. And I just read something about a couple of Iowa State football players and University of Iowa football players just got in trouble and by the law for gambling.
Yeah.
For placing bets. And one of them was the Iowa State quarterback, Hunter Decker, I think was his name. And he was their starting quarterback, and now he was like, I think he's off the team, and these guys could completely lose their eligibility in the NCAA because of this. But I read part of the story, and I'm keying in on him and his parents, because apparently he placed a lot of bets on DraftKings through his parents, and he's considered, and the reason they got in trouble with the law is because they're minors. They're still considered underage to be placing bets. I think they must have been under 21. So, but their parents his parents placed his bets on his behalf. And there was a lot of bets. It wasn't like one or two. It was like dozens.
Yeah.
On his behalf. And the first thing I could think of is like, what the hell is a parent, gambling on behalf of their kid? And then screwing with his, what do you call it? NCAA eligibility on top of that.
Yeah. Right.
But just in general, so the whole online sports betting thing really disgusts me. And I'm going to die on that hill because I've seen what gambling can do to people. And, it's just like, what are these parents thinking? So my jerk of the week is Hunter Decker's parents for even bothering to enable this kind of thing at a young age.
Oh, I have to ask you, Nick, as an Iowa State grad, did you watch El Assico this weekend? Iowa State.
I did not. Honestly, I grew up a Michigan fan, so that's my first love. When I got to Iowa State, the coach went 0-10-1 my first year.
Yeah.
And they were selling T-shirts at a university bookstore saying a drinking school with a football problem. And they haven't been that much better overall, but they've kind of they haven't been 0-10-1 again. So
yes. All right.
I think their basketball I'd watch more.
Yeah, exactly. They have a history of good basketball there. So, Greg, your jerk.
I'm going to go maybe even more obscure than Nick did, because I don't normally do anything involving soccer, but I don't know how much you guys have heard about this controversy in Spain. And I'm bringing it up because in light of what's going on with Mel Tucker at Michigan State, and I was mentioning earlier about why men can't just control themselves. Luis Rubiales was the Spanish Football Federation president. And August 20th, after Spain won the World Cup in women's soccer, Rubiales got overzealous and kissed forward Jenny Hermoso right smack on the mouth.
Mhm.
And of course, she was appalled, and it was not welcomed. And she filed a sexual assault allegation against him, the whole 9 yards. He initially, Rubiales, this is why I'm giving him the jerk of the week. He initially said his defense this whole time was that it was consensual, which is, and I don't mean to laugh because this isn't funny, but it's funny in the sense that how you could even think that something like that is consensual. The men always like to go to the consensual card anyway, but
Right.
how the hell is an impromptu kiss where it was totally off the cuff? I mean, totally. I mean, this was not something that was like the Mel Tucker thing was. It was a lead up, and they formed a relationship and so forth. This guy just flat out grabs this girl in the middle of the celebration and kisses her on the lips. And he's trying to say it's consensual. How in the world did she even have time to consent when all he's doing is grabbing her and kissing her? It's like that famous photograph when World War II ended of the sailor kissing the nurse, which is a term which everybody thinks is a great moment, but as it turns out, the nurse said that it was not consensual, that he kissed her against her will. Of course, that's unfortunately that's been buried, but she didn't think that was consensual, although it made a great iconic photograph. This thing with Rubiales, how he can say that in the middle of a celebration, he just grabs some girl, some player, kisses her on the lips, and then tries to say it was consensual, to me is hilarious. And I don't mean to make light of it because I'm not. And she's good for her. She's pushing it. She's now she's bringing up criminal charges against this guy. Of course, he eventually resigned, but he initially was not going to resign, and he said they said he was also seen in that celebration grabbing women's crotches and the whole 9 yards. So this guy's a scumbag, obviously.
Jesus.
Yeah.
So Luis Rubiales is out. He should be out. And this whole notion that a spontaneous kiss on the lips was consensual is hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that whole situation with that soccer federation got very, very ugly. There's been a lot going on there that needs a lot of upheaval. But that's a very good one. And I wouldn't say it was that bizarre. I mean, obscure, because I did hear about this story myself. So, all right. I'm going back to the betting thing. I'm sure, I don't know if Nick heard this, but my jerk of the week is DraftKings, because obviously today is 9/11, the anniversary of the attack on the World Trade Center. And DraftKings, the online betting sports book, they tweeted a parlay this morning, essentially saying that this is the tweet: never forget, bet these New York teams to win tonight on 9/11. Mets to win, Yankees to win, Jets to win. And I believe you got some sort of profit boost by betting on this. Why? Why would you do something like that and then think it's a good idea? And it just also leads to why does every organization feel like they have to say something today? Yeah,
right.
No, I don't care what the Lions think about 9/11. I noticed they tweeted something about it today. It's
Oh, he was just getting to the good part. I think he froze on me.
It's just shit. For the anniversary of a catastrophe, because you end up with situations like DraftKings today, looking like absolute doofuses and clueless and insensitive, and just looking honestly stupid for tweeting out something like that and saying, "Oh yeah, bet on the New York teams today. You have a 9/11 themed parlay." That is one of the dumbest things I have ever seen. And this is the 22nd anniversary of the terrorist attack, and that goes for other large companies that do the same damn thing, where they try to exploit, I guess is the best way to put it. They try to exploit the attention that come with anniversaries of things like this. And this isn't the first time we've seen companies do stupid stuff like this, and it won't be the last time. But you would think sooner or later they would learn their lesson and just shut up when it comes to these kind of things. So my jerk of the week is DraftKings for trying to exploit the World Trade Center terrorist tragedy.
No, that's a good one. That's
a good one.
That's almost reprehensible, really.
Yeah, I wish I would have used that word. All right, with that, I think it's time to start wrapping things up. Greg, why don't you get out, tell everybody where they can find us on social media and anything else you want to let us know about the podcast?
Sure. We'll try to get to be. Well, I'm not sure if we'll have a guest for you next time with three of us. We're able to kind of fill the time for sure, but
Yeah.
we're not opposed to having guests. So I will still continue to work on
Yeah,
guests.
it's something that we could do in the future. It's not a priority. Exactly.
Yeah, we're still trying to, so we're still trying to find a way as a threesome here, but we'll roll in some guests sooner rather than later. I do want to let everybody
I don't
know.
want to take that out of context. Find our way as a threesome. So.
Well, you didn't have to call attention to that.
Oh my God! I'm sorry,
yeah.
Greg. I couldn't help myself.
No, I know. You can find me on Substack, gregino.substack.com. Out of bounds. I come in your inbox every Monday, basically. So new one out today with the aforementioned Awesome Metal situation and Jim Eisenreich. Please check that out. Follow me on Twitter at Greg Eno. Follow the Knee Jerks on Twitter at the Knee Jerks. I want to thank my lovely wife Sharon for putting up with this nonsense every other week, and thank you guys for making, in this case, Monday nights so gosh darn fun.
Yes. Yeah. And anything else you'd like to add, Nick?
Not much, but if as far as social media goes, follow me at Nick Milanovich on Twitter. You'll hear me. I'm not on any other social media talking about sports other than Twitter. So please join along. There's a nice group of us, fellow Detroit sports fans, and we have all kinds of conversations during the weeks.
Yes.
Usually, Greg starts by introducing an article, and God knows where the conversations go. So, it's been fun. It's been fun, actually. So please join along.
Yeah, and obviously all the links to these things will all be in the show notes, and that leads us to, if you want to listen to the show, you can find us at all the normal type places that host podcasts or podcast aggravators. Just type in the Knee Jerks, and you'll be able to listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Amazon, Deezer. TheKneeJerks.net is the homepage where everything will be listed, and the links all be there. Also, if you are listening on Stitcher, if it's going under, or it's being swallowed up by SiriusXM, so I have to figure out where that link is now going to go. But there are so many other options to listen to the show. Please like, share, subscribe. Leave a comment. Let us know what you think of the show. Hit these guys up on Twitter. Let them know what you think. And I guess we'll be back in 2 weeks. Actually, more like 15 days since we're recording a day early today. Barring any changes in travel. No, wait a second. Am I going to be here for the next one? I don't even remember at this point. Yes, I am. Yes, I will, because I'm not leaving till October. So, yeah, that obviously that's the other thing I need to bring up is that we probably will be taking only be one show in October, because I'll be in Florida visiting my father. So we probably have some time off between late September and late October. Again, we'll clue you in when we get closer to that. But with that out of the way, let's get the hell out of here. So we'll see you a little over 2 weeks. So until that time, this is Al Beaton saying good evening, good luck, and aloha, along with Nick Milanovich.
Later, guys.
And Greg.
Totally. See you in 2 weeks.